Hi there, welcome back to my YouTube, and I hope you're keeping well and you're keeping up with your training. I thought I would do a little bit of arm work tonight, and especially I'll be working the triceps. And as I mentioned before, I would keep a compound movement in there, so it would be again the progressive overload, and then the variables would be the like of the isolated sort of exercises as well, but I just change them around, but I keep the compound movement in place and most of my sort of routines. So we're going to work the triceps, and as I mentioned before, you have the long head and the medial head and the lateral head of the tricep. And the tricep, as I said before, is double the size of the bicep, and therefore, if you want to really, build those guns up, you can work on the tricep, and with it being a larger muscle group, then you can actually add size to that as well. And then again, you can work on the bicep and work on that peak of the bicep. But again, I'm just going to go through these couple of exercises, and it's going to be a superset, as I say, close grip bench press, then followed by tricep extensions, a really French press. But I haven't done this isolation movement, the French press, in a while. So I'm just, as I say, trying to sort of bring in some new exercises for myself. Maybe they're not new for you, but it's to keep the body guessing, and therefore you're shocking the muscle. The muscle's not becoming sort of lazy and saying, well, I can relax again here, but go through that same old routine. But also, it's a good thing to have sort of mind connection to the muscle as well. And often, young lifters or even beginners or even some intermediate, they don't really have that mind muscle connection. So you're actually going to go through that simple movement. And if you think about the tricep, and if you're basically able to actually put the mind into that muscle, and as you can see, even with there's some slight sort of movement there as well and on the tricep. So as I tense that, I'm sort of connecting that sort of muscle up. So I'm thinking about that muscle, I'm aware of that muscle, and then when I'm performing the exercise, instead of just simply doing the movement, I'm concentrating with that mind connection into that muscle. And I think, one of the, a good pointer there is when you get into bed at night time and you're lying flat on the bed and you start to think of, say, for instance, even your calf muscles. And if you can sort of tense those calf muscles up and then release them again, that's making that mind connection. And if you're working up even the quadriceps, you're tensing those as well. And again, with the rectus abdominals and with the pectoralis major and minor muscles, you can sort of move them about, because it's really a form of like muscle control. So therefore, your mind is in connection with that particular muscle group, and it's the same with the arms there as well. You can actually move the arms, so mind muscle connection, and the deltoids, the frontal and the lateral, and also the posterior head of the deltoid. But even if you're sort of tensing those, and you come aware of your trapezius muscles as well, and also the neck. But if you go from your calf muscles right up until your shoulders, and sort of try to make that mind connection, then when you're in the gym, you'll not be simply just going through that particular sort of movement, but you'll be linking the mind up with the muscle, and it will certainly help for the muscle to grow. So we're going to go through these couple of wee exercises. It's just going to be a superset, and we'll see how it goes. I don't have a great lot of space in here to move around, but as I say, that felt good enough. And also I warmed up just before that. Sort of performing this particular one with 20, 30, there's 60, maybe 70 kilos on the bar, and got roughly about, well, I got 10 repetitions and also 10 repetitions with the tricep extension. So again, my wee body has been used to maybe doing, say, close grip push downs for the tricep, or else simply maybe some kickbacks as well. But there I tried something different, and as I say, my muscle, it hasn't been used to that. So therefore, as I mentioned before, when you're having your compound movement in there, you're keeping that in, and you can add the weight and sort of that added sort of resistance, but also the variables, bringing in other different movements. And you don't need to superset if you don't want to, but again, that's another way of shocking the muscle. So I hope to see you soon, and as I say, I'm gonna try over this next wee while to go back to the real basics, you know, the old school, using the free weights. And I want to try to work through the big five. You know, we're working on the bench press, you know, the deadlift, the military press, the bent over rows, and you know, the squats, and just those big compound movements. And I'm just going to try to incorporate them into my routine for a while over maybe this next couple of weeks or so, and see, you know, if I can sort of put on that little bit of size. Now the thing being is that, as I mentioned before, you know, as you get older there, that's sarcopenia, and there's that sort of loss of the muscle mass. And as I mentioned before, the legs often are the first thing that starts to go. And if you can keep fit, if you're even out, you're out walking the dog around the park, you're able to go to the gym and even go through those compound movements. And you know, you don't need to use a lot of weight. And you know, and again, if you're just sort of starting off, and I can remember back in my younger days when I went to the gym there in Avondon Bars, and the gym really was open to the men on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. Well, we did sometimes we would go on a Saturday morning, but the ladies, they used the gym, you know, on the Tuesdays and the Thursdays, and also the Saturday. So even on the Saturday, we had to wait a time until they came out of the gym. And that sort of may sound strange, but that's what the setup was, you know, back then. And you know, now you can go into a gym, and I say it's really, you know, it's open to all sort of patrons, and you know, they can come in together, they can use the gym, and naturally we would have separate, you know, shower rooms as well. But unfortunately, we just still had the one shower space, so therefore we had to wait on the ladies to finish before then, you know, we went into the gym and we started our training. But back then too, you know, we started off with a full, really body workout, you know, and it's, you know, again, it was back to those, you know, the fundamentals, the compound movements were there. And I can remember starting off, with the like of the bench press and just doing the bench press, and then moving on, say, to the military press, and then over onto the bent over rows, for the back. Or maybe we had a lat pull down machine as well, and we had sort of various, different sizes of dumbbells there. So again, we were sort of working the full body over that sort of 3 day period, and then with the rest in between. And if you sort of check on my YouTube channel, you'll see me there as a boy at 16, and I'd only been training a few months, and I'd made, there was those newbie gains, not naturally that everybody makes, but again, that sort of system, it worked for me, and it maybe worked for beginners, but at the same time, if you're working the full body in one particular day, then, as I say, you're not going, you're having that rest in between. And I think sometimes, you don't really need any longer than a 48-hour period before, you get rid of the DOMS, that delayed onset of muscle soreness. And I think really once you start to feel, I know from my own personal experience, once I sort of feel the muscle, and it's not sore, and again, I'm just there ready to work in the gym. But there's so many routines out there. You have the bro split, and as I say, the full body, and then you have the sort of pull and push movements. But in my experience, one size doesn't really fit all. And, I believe in a personal centered perspective. And if you worked in, say in medicine, or you're working, say, within the support system, not everybody's medication is the same. Not everybody, you would have a certain sort of a profile on each individual, and everyone has their own needs, and we all have different, body types as well, and as I say, sometimes we had this between, like of high intensity exercise, like Mike Manser. And, fair enough, there is times, and, and it can work to a certain degree. But I think he designed that program for really the like of businessmen and people like that, who didn't have really much time to train. And it was really a bit of a, I don't know whether to say it's a marketing ploy, but there was some benefits to that sort of particular program, where on the other hand you had the like of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Serge Nubret, where they had a high sort of volume of training, and often they would spend maybe 2 or 3 hours into the gym. So that sort of personal centered training, if you think of the high sort of intensity, the effort in there with using really high weights and sort of low volume, and then on the other hand, Serge Nubret, who's a very strong individual, and in fact I personally watched Serge Nubret bench press with over 200 pounds on the bar, and he was able to rep out maybe 20-25 reps, but also he was able to lift heavy as well. But he used really the pump sort of system and that sort of high volume, and the same with Arnold, and especially even coming up to the competitions where Arnold had trained twice a day. But anyway, it's food for thought, and sometimes you can just find that wee balance in the middle and find yourself, instead of maybe doing so much volume or maybe so high intensity, that you find that you can maybe do 3, 4, 5 sets, per body part, and then sort of you can develop that, because you can actually, you can overtrain, and at the same time it's just really trying to find that balance, too. But it's good to talk fitness. It's good to talk a wee bit about bodybuilding, and it's one of my great loves. And as I say, just tune in, as I say, to the wee channel, and we can get together. We can do a wee bit of training together. We can have a bit of a chat. We can go down memory lane, and then we can share on each other's journey. So until I see you again, thanks for tuning in. And again, as I say, for the new subscribers there, it's fantastic. And it really sort of lifts me up as well, to find that I have that, that support behind me. And, just we all need that encouragement, and don't be afraid to comment there. And if there's any questions that I can answer, then, just put as I say, your thoughts forward. And as I say, we can look at these things together. But as I say, get back into that gym, get back into your training again. And if you're, unable to get to the gym, you can have your wee home set up like this as well, and, gradually build up your weights. And hopefully I can do some simple sort of, exercises that you can use with home equipment, and even especially too for, the ladies out there, or the beginners who want to make those positive changes to their lifestyle and to their diet and to their training. But as I say, good to see you, and take care until we meet up again.